Welcome to On the Porch, the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle is an enrolled member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and lives in Qualla, North Carolina. She holds degrees from Yale and the College of William and Mary. Annette is also a finalist for the Penn Bellwether Prize for Socially Engaged Fiction. Her writing has appeared in LitHub, The Atlantic, and many other places. After serving as executive director of the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, Annette returned to teaching at Swain County High School. She is the former co-editor of the Journal of Cherokee Studies, and her debut novel, Even As We Breathe, was released in 2020 and was a finalist for the Weatherford Award and named as one of NPR's best books of 2020. Full disclosure here, I was the editor of that novel. So welcome to On the Porch, Annette.
Thanks for having me, Silas. I'm happy to chat with you for a little while.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. One thing I love about our listeners is that they are readers. So let's start by telling them about Even As We Breathe. In your words, what do you want them to know about the novel?
Sure. So Even As We Breathe is set the summer of 1942. When the Grove Park Inn and Resort in Asheville, North Carolina, held access diplomats and foreign nationals as prisoners of war. And my protagonist is County Sequoyah. He's 19 years old, and he's a young Cherokee man who goes to work there that summer. He's joined by Essie Stamper, a young Cherokee woman who is also working on the grounds of this really posh resort in western North Carolina for the summer. While County is at the Grove Park, he is accused of being involved in the disappearance of a diplomat's daughter. And while he's trying to clear his name, he is also trying to unravel a bit of a family secret back home in Cherokee. It doesn't help the fact that he's fallen for Essie, and they have a pretty unique relationship that builds over that summer while they're working at the Grove Park.
Right. And you do such a beautiful job of going back and forth between County's home place and Asheville. And you sort of have, I love it when a novel has places that are sort of in conflict, as well as people in conflict. So that's one thing I love about it. The period details in the book are so rich. So how much research did you have to do to take us back to World War II era Western North Carolina?
Sure. So, I'm both fortunate and maybe a little unlucky that there's not a lot of research available specifically from what was going on that summer at the Grove Park. So I'm fortunate as a fiction writer that I have a little bit of latitude in where I can take readers. But I focused in my research mostly on understanding the region during 1942 and kind of the cultural context and environmental setting of the landscape during that time period. So I spent a lot of time looking at old photographs mostly to make sure that I was getting, things as specific as what the roads look like between Cherokee and Asheville. And then the Grove Park Inn itself has a little bit of history recorded. They have a book out. In fact, it's the history of the Grove Park, but there's only about a half a page or so on that summer in 1942,
Wow.
which makes sense, though. I mean, it's wartime and in a short period of time. So I was mostly just focused on cultural and environmental context and let that really, kind of direct the events, of that summer. So, this is what I always say, that this is a setting-driven novel because you do have these two places in conflict, but also this wartime period that really kind of ups the stakes.
Yeah, I don't think most people know that there were prisoners held, in this area during World War II. And in this case, they're prisoners who are being treated really, really well because they're diplomats, right? They're German diplomats. And so on one hand, they're being held there, but on the other hand, they are not at the bottom of the hierarchy. Actually, the workers are. The people who are working there are more so at the bottom of that hierarchy. So I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah, that was something that I really attracted me to this story in general, because I know that some Japanese internment camps were set up on Indian reservations out west. And I've always kind of been fascinated with this idea of imprisonment and land and who's considered a prisoner and when. And so it made sense for me to use this actual event, this actual place, and explore these motifs of citizenship and belonging and class, and how class plays a role in all of these questions.
Well, amazingly, Even As We Breathe is the first ever novel to be published by an enrolled member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. So when you're from a specific culture, there's a lot of responsibility that goes with being a writer or any kind of public figure. In your case, you're expected to not only represent the Eastern Band of Cherokee, but also the region of Appalachia. So how do you feel about those expectations that you now represent your place and your people as somebody who's out there, as a public figure?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm honored to serve in that role, but it is a responsibility, and I want to make sure that, I'm always careful to say I'm just one voice from the Eastern Band, or I'm just one voice from Appalachia. It's really an opportunity, specifically with the Eastern Band, to try to use, kind of a new a platform to help leverage opportunities for other artists from our community who are far more talented than I am. So, for example, I've become a point of contact for a lot of people outside of our community because, people can find me, right. When they're looking for representation from our community. So, people are looking for visual artists to do work. They're looking for voiceover work, all kinds of things. And so, I feel like it's a great opportunity for me to connect some other members of our tribe, other citizens from our tribe, to give them the opportunities that I've been fortunate enough to have because people have done that for me. So, and that, kind of full circle, a lot of those opportunities that I've had have been from people in Appalachia in general, people like yourself, of course, who have made it possible for me to get this voice out. So I love kind of thinking of it as this, expanding web that can help, bring attention to some of these other voices that are out there. And it, I don't want to misstep. There is that pressure not to convey our culture in a way that's not true. And it gets, it's sometimes daunting work to be that one accessible voice for a tribe. But I'm mostly just honored to have the opportunity.
This is WUKY 91.3 FM, listener-supported radio. I'm Silas House. This is On the Porch, and we're visiting with Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle, author of Even As We Breathe. Well, Annette, in American schools, we're not taught hardly anything about Native American life, and when we are, it's almost always from the white point of view. So if people truly want to have a deeper understanding of Cherokee culture, what would you advise them to do?
I always think make a visit. I don't think you can understand our culture without understanding place, and you just can't get there through the history book. And so, I know it's not possible, especially during a pandemic, to travel necessarily. But if you can and get the opportunity to visit us, in Western North Carolina and Cherokee. I think there's a lot to learn from our cultural attractions, or just being in the midst of our community. And then other than that, I always encourage people to read fiction if they are seeking to empathize with a community. And so, as we mentioned, since I'm the only Eastern Band author, I really do recommend there are some Cherokee Nation authors, for example, that, of course, Cherokee Nation is our brother-sister tribe. We are the same tribe. So folks like Kelly Jo Ford just released a novel, maybe a little bit before mine. Crooked Hallelujah is the name of that. And, she's just one of several Cherokee Nation authors who are writing. So even though it's not necessarily reading the history of our tribe, I think it's just as important to read the creative fiction because you get a sense of worldview.
Yes.
That I think is the most important thing. The history books are not written by Native people in general, so some of these novels at least give you an authentic worldview.
Right. I think the museum in Cherokee is just wonderful, and more people should visit it. So many people go to the Smokies and never go on over to Cherokee and visit that museum or see the outdoor drama. So there's so much there. The
Okanluffy Indian Museum, which is a living history outdoor. Yeah, and especially, if you're thinking about wanting to do things that are outdoors, they're a little bit safer in this climate, then the village is a great place to visit.
Well, like most writers, you do have another job besides writing. So as I said, you are a high school teacher, and I've seen you in action as a high school teacher. It's just it's really great to see how much your students admire you. But I can't imagine what that's been like through this pandemic. So how are you and the students hanging in there?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not easy. And it's been, this year's been harder than I expected it because to some extent there's a little bit of normalcy. I mean, we're in school 5 days a week. We are masked. But it's been a hard year of readjustment, and I guess we've just been through constant readjustment for the last couple of years. Every few months we readjust to something new. But there's I think I feel connected to my students in a new way this year because we have this commonality that we've had to go through an event or events like this together. And there's a lot more, empathy, both, on both ends. Sometimes high school students aren't the most empathetic with teachers, and that's understandable. But I feel it this year more than in past years. I think we're just tired. We're very tired all the time, and so I'll give you an example. Today, my seniors, these are my AP Lit students. They're all applying to colleges right now and have been stressed as seniors tend to be this time of year. And we're reading a novel and talking about the narrator. It's a third-person omniscient narrator, but when the narration goes back to a flashback, it's kind of an immature narrator. We have the feeling, because we're early on, that there's a childlike perspective. And so I was telling my students, I always tell them stories about my youngest son, Charlie, who, has all these observations about life at age 8. And so I decided today that we would go outside for a walk. And I told them, you guys are ages 4 to 8. I want you to observe, the world around you as if you are between the ages of 4 and 8, the best you can. We had the best time this morning, and to see them laugh and not worry about everything all the time was great. When we got back into the classroom, what they had to say about that experience, how they just thought about what was in front of them at that moment, was so different than what they're used to. And I think that that's, indicative of what we're going through right now. It's just, a constant worry, it feels like. And we need a little bit of a break. Yeah.
Yeah. My students were telling me the other day that they realize that this is a complete paradigm shift and it's changed their whole lives, so I'm really sad for them and how much it's, I just can't imagine being a young person through all this. But
I know.
But you are such a multifaceted person. You're a writer, you're a teacher, and you're also a mountain bike rider. People don't expect those three things to go together. So tell us what you love about riding mountain bikes, and specifically, I'd like to hear how it feeds you as a rider.
Yeah.
WRITER.
I know. I'll have to clarify since I'm on, it's audio. Well, it's funny. I'm on my way to go ride here in a moment, so I'm in riding clothes. But I love how the motion and the physicality of it feeds my writing. Mm-hmm. So, it's been said that good writing is felt in the body. And so being an active person, and I think you can do it in all kinds of ways. You don't have to get on a mountain bike, but being an active person helps you really kind of feel out how we negotiate the world. And as I explain it to people, it's, when you talk about, for example, imagery, imagery is so much more than just those, what you smell, what you touch, what you see. It's also like weight on the body,
yes.
How air moves across your body, the pressure, all these things. And being an active person helps me realize that more. I can tap into it, when I'm sitting in front of a computer more. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I know that you and I have in common is just this love of the outdoors and how place influences story for us. Yeah. So I love being in the middle of the woods and focusing on not dying on a bike for one, but just kind of I was telling a friend the other day, I ride some of the same trails over and over, but the trail is different every single day. And I love noticing how the subtleties of how seasons change. Not long ago, I was on the mountain and it stunk so bad. I mean, it smelled like 10 animals were dead on the trail, but it was the mushrooms dying. And I wouldn't know that otherwise. I wouldn't, know. So I love those kind of experiences. And then the final thing I'll say about it is I often write while I ride. And by that, I mean in my head. So oftentimes I'll just have a sentence that will come to me while I'm on a bike. And I just work it and work it and work it while I'm on the bike because I can't write it down. So A, don't want to forget it, and then B, it's just like you're in motion working that sentence over and over. It's just a really kind of a neat process for me to do that fine-tuned writing while I'm on a bike.
Yeah, that's beautifully articulated. That makes so much sense. Well, the first half of the show, I play music, so I always want to know what my guests are listening to and loving these days.
Oh, I am a little overly obsessed, and I hope I say his last name right. I could be wrong. Ryan Montbleu, who he was the first concert out of COVID I saw. That may have something to do with it, an outdoor venue. But I just love his. I love his lyrics. I'm a lyrics first kind of person. So I'm listening to a lot of him. And then, you introduced me to Dory Freeman, and she has a new album out. So I've been loving that.
Yeah, I played a track off that on today's show. So.
Oh, did you? Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah,
she's one of the best. She's. I want more and more people to know about Dory Freeman, so I'm so glad you're into that.
I mean, I use her lyrics in class when we study poetry specifically.
Yeah. What about recent books you'd like to recommend besides your own, of course, to our audience?
Let's see. So I mentioned Crooked Hallelujah, and I get some of these books may not be like super recent because once school starts, I'm rereading things a lot. But I have been. This is almost embarrassing to say that it's taken me this long to get to this book, but I've been taking it really slow and I've been listening on audio to Braiding Sweetgrass. And I've just been and I made myself take it slow because it's such a rich, beautiful, beautiful book. Kimmerer is the last name of the author. Just a beautiful book. And then right now this is way off from my normal. I'm reading My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is horror fiction by another Native author who actually we were just at a book festival together. So I have a tendency to read.
Stephen Graham Brown, is that right?
Yeah, Stephen Graham Brown. Yeah. Or Graham Jones. I'm sorry,
okay,
Graham Jones. And I kept almost calling him Stephen Graham Green because of Graham Greene. But and then I think that's mostly what I'm reading right now. Because I'm reading a lot of student essays right now, too.
Right. Yeah, teaching, especially being a public school teacher, so all-encompassing. When do you get to write?
That's a good question. I wake up at 5 in the morning, and I just try to get in that routine. I think with novels, I have to do it every day. I have to write or be editing or something with the novel that I'm working on every day, or I just lose it and I feel like I waste so much time because then I have to go back and kind of re-enter that world. So at least a little bit every morning. But then I just have to try to find. I've got a long weekend or something like that. Mostly the most generative part of it is in the summer when I have a longer period of time. And I did some retreats and whatnot this summer that could do that. But Robert Geip's piece of advice is touch it every day. And he's right about that when it comes to novel writing.
Well, it certainly paid off with Even As We Breathe, and I just can't recommend that highly enough for everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us on the porch, Annette.
Yeah, thank you, Silas. It was great to hear your voice.
Even As We Breathe is available wherever fine books are sold. I hope all of you will get a copy. And thank all of you for being here with us today on this episode of On the Porch. Until next time, be good to one another. Thanks for listening to the podcast of On the Porch. I'm your host, Silas House. This episode was engineered and produced by DeBron Thomas at the studios of WUKY 91.3 FM in Lexington, Kentucky. We are listener-supported radio, and we thank you for joining us.